you start with a story. You start telling your story. You start saying why we need more than one source of water. Why is it so difficult to get another source of water, and why reuse is really the solution. It's the perfect storm in El Paso. We need an additional water source.
Well, and I've seen you describe the decision in a previous video as a means of diversification, not desperation. And I think that's such a powerful statement.
Sure. So our project out here in El Paso, it's a direct to distribution potable reuse project. So that means that we are taking a treated wastewater effluent, and we are gonna then immediately process it at an advanced water purification plant. We'll use advanced treatment processes to further treat the water. And then we're gonna go straight to our customers. So that's the unique part of the project, that we're not gonna discharge into a lake, a reservoir, a river, which then becomes like a source, like a new source water, which then gets treated again. That's not what we're doing. We're gonna go straight to our customers with this water, mainly because it's safe to do so. It meets a necessity that we need in El Paso in terms of a new potable water resource for us. And it's the most economical thing to do. I think a lot of the things around that I see talking to other communities about these types of projects is the cost. Oddly enough, for us, this new water resource is the most economical thing for us to do. It's the logical thing for us to do, and that's what we're going to do for our customers. Luckily, they're on board, and that in itself could be an interview all on its own.
Well, we'll come on to kind of getting customers on board a little bit later on, but you mentioned this is direct potable reuse, so you could say it's more of a closed loop, right? It's quicker to get that treated water out. But it's also, from my perspective, a bit of a rarity. There's few large-scale kind of flagship direct potable reuse projects in the world, so it's great to see El Paso leading this. But tell me about why there's perhaps more of an urgency for direct potable reuse compared to indirect.
Well, for us, going through all the engineering analysis, we didn't want to go straight to direct to distribution, direct potable reuse, just to be sensational or just to say we're the first ones. For us, it makes a lot of sense. So when you look at the evolution of water reuse, as other communities are doing, a lot of the communities now are either at the purple pipe, what we call the purple pipe stage, where they take a treated effluent, disinfect it further, filter it a little bit more, and then they use it for irrigation of green spaces, golf courses and such. That's where most folks like to take their first step in terms of reuse. Other more progressive cities are doing indirect potable reuse, where they will use their treated effluent, treat it some more, and then put it in their lake or reservoir, river, to augment a raw water supplies. And all of these, that stage really is the reason for doing that is a lot of perception. I think a lot of folks are just not ready to go straight from a wastewater treatment plant, direct pipe, to a water treatment plant, direct pipe to tanks and pipes where folks are going to be drinking from. It's really a matter of public perception, because from a matter of treatment and safety, the water we're producing is going to be the same no matter what. Even the highly treated water that communities use to augment their current water supply, lakes, rivers, and such, that still has to be treated to a potable water standard. That water can already be drank. It's just a matter of perception. In El Paso, we don't have a reservoir nearby that we can augment. The reservoir that we do get surface water from is 120 miles north of us. So for us to treat this water, pump it up north just so it could blend with whatever water is there, doesn't make any sense. We do have 2 aquifers here in El Paso that we use for a groundwater resource, but where the wastewater plant is located, the groundwater there is not of good quality. It has high TDS, has metals, has water quality issues. So again, for us to treat our wastewater to a drinking water standard and then inject it, really make it of poor quality just to re-inject it again and treat it again, it just doesn't make sense. And then of course the river, our Rio Grande River, flows dry for the better part of the year. It only has water during irrigation season. So again, it's not a reliable source of water for us to blend with. It's the perfect storm in El Paso. We need an additional water source. We can and have planned to do other projects. Groundwater importation 120 miles away from other neighboring counties in the state. We can do that, but that, number one, is extremely expensive to pump so much water. That water will also have to be treated. So for us, we have 100 million gallons per day of wastewater that flow to our plants every day. That is water that we already invest money in. We either pump it out, we purchase it from our reservoir, from the entity that we purchase our surface water from. This is our water we've paid for. It's coming back to us. Why not keep it, treat it, reuse it? And as you said, close the loop. Close the loop. That's what reuse is. Closing the loop to the water cycle. For us, it makes perfect sense.
Well, clearly you're seeing the value in that wastewater that you mentioned as a resource to then take time and time again and recycle safely and cleanly. The way you explain it is very clear to me. But what about to the public? Tell me about, because obviously transparency and very clear communication, kind of education is a key part of this. So talk to me about kind of overcoming that perception, even if you had to overcome it, and some of the lessons you can share with other utilities around the world when it comes to direct reuse.
Well, amazingly, when we started this effort and the communications efforts for this advanced water purification plant, there was not a huge hill that we had to overcome. And the reason for that is because we have been doing outreach on all our water sources and water reuse projects since 1985. So I like to say that our outreach started in 1985 with our Fred Hervey water reclamation plant, which is one of the first plants in the States to take a treated effluent, treat it to drinking water standard. But at that time, we were and still do inject it into our aquifer. So we already do indirect potable reuse. And I reference back to the evolution of the different steps that a community takes to get to the point where we are now. We did the purple pipe. We did groundwater augmentation, what I'll call groundwater augmentation of a current source. Did a lot of outreach to our customers associated with that. So our customers know, growing up in El Paso, I grew up in El Paso, a lot of outreach in schools, a lot of learning centers. You grow up just knowing where our water comes from. So when we want to take this next step, a lot of the times they're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. That is the next thing to do. And whoever is new to our community and didn't grow up here, we tell them the story. We can show them the proof that we've been treating wastewater to drinking water for several decades now, successfully, safely. We explain to them the need for an additional water source. And just like I explained to you, Tom, we can pump water from 120 miles away, bring it here to El Paso, treat it and use it. It's going to cost this much. Or we can let water just flow right to us. It already does. Water we've already paid for as customers and users of this water, and just simply treat it to a very high standard and let's drink it. And when we get people logically there, even someone who's not technical, they could say, yeah, we understand.
Gotcha. So it sounds as if that kind of 35 plus years like history and heritage of El Paso, like you say, kind of already spearheading the indirect potable reuse as part of that journey to get to where you are at the moment. That's kind of a story that lends itself well to the current development, right? But obviously not every water utility in the world has a history of doing indirect potable reuse. So what sort of lessons would you share when it comes to communicating when you don't have that backstory or that back kind of success story?
I like how you put it, the journey. So although everyone may not have our journey, every utility does have their journey as to water resources in their community, how it's gotten to be the way it is to be, how they're getting water, what happens to their water. Everyone does have a journey. And everyone's journey is now taking them to that first step in water reuse. And that's what I tell utilities. I think that the lesson learned is start telling your story to your community. Right. Every community has a really, really neat story as to how water got first produced. How was it first groundwater? Was it first surface water? When did it become a mixture of two? If it's still just one, why is it still just one? What are the challenges that the utility is facing? And that challenge will then take you to the next logical step. This is why we now need to reuse water. And it could be the purple pipe phase, the purple pipe phase, or it could be the augmentation of their current water reuse. But I think the advice I give is start telling your story to your customers. It's a great story. It's always a great story as to how they get their drinking water and what happens to their drinking water after they use it. And everyone's interested. Everyone tends to get excited about it. I'm yet to meet someone that says, "Oh, that's boring. I don't care. Just give me water." Like, man, that's really neat. Yeah. I didn't know all of this was all interconnected. And then they start asking really good questions when they start to piece it together and they start to see the problems that the utility faces. So the advice is start telling your story. Start telling it now. Tell it as soon as you can, because it really is a good one. It's always a good one.
Well, and I've seen you describe the decision in a previous video as a means of diversification, not desperation. And I think that's such a powerful statement, to diversify your water supplies before you even get to the desperate stage.
Yeah, so that statement the credit goes to our communications manager, Cristina Montoya, because that is part of our journey. So I think as we realize and utility leaders for El Paso Water in the past, they realized that having just one source of water is not good. You try and have as many as possible. Now it's never easy. Water resource projects and diversification is not something that you plan to do and then you do it. Water resource projects take decades usually to complete, to undertake. Mm-hmm. Water rights issues, it's just never that simple. And when you talk to most utilities that are have just one water source, and then they do find themselves in desperate times taking what they would call desperate measures, and that's something that we're combating against. Doing a direct potable reuse project should not be out of desperation. It's not really shouldn't be a last case thing, like, oh my God, now because of all this we have to do this, almost like you're being forced to do something bad. And in El Paso, we want to change that mindset. Like, this isn't something bad. This isn't a last recourse of something to do because you're running out of water. It's a very logical thing to do. As I mentioned, you have all this water coming at you. You should drink it, or you should use the water coming to you. It is a water reuse resource. The advice to communities, even the ones that are in very tight spots, and I know that there's several, being a part of Water Reuse Association, so communities, it's not easy, but you start with a story. You start telling your story. You start saying why we need more than one source of water. Why is it so difficult to get another source of water, and why reuse is really the solution to their issues. You start to do the diversification instead of ahead of desperation. Modifying the same a little bit more. I think that's another real good piece of advice for your communities all across the world.
Great stuff. Thank you, Gilbert. Well, as a kind of journalist and content storyteller myself, when you say tell a story, it's kind of music to my ears that you're thinking that through storytelling, it's a way to get through something that's quite technical, but lead with that, get the trust of people on board. And like you say, even if you don't have that heritage and history of moving from indirect to direct, your water has to come from somewhere. So to look at a way to build your trust with your community. But Gilbert, fascinating to speak with you again. Good to catch up, and do keep in touch with us on the status of that project. I think it's one to watch, and the way that El Paso Water is diversifying its water supplies is certainly something that lessons can be shared elsewhere around the world. So we want to thank you for your time and for the interview as well.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for the interest in our project and in our community. We strive to make our community proud, but just the water industry as a whole, water-wide. We know the eyes of the world are on us, and we're going to do it right, and we're excited to be the first ones to show everyone that this is something safe to do, and it makes a lot of sense to do, and will solve a lot of water-related issues for a lot of communities around the world. So I appreciate it, Tom.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gilbert.